Good afternoon and welcome to the WEM Governing Body General Session meeting. Please note that today's call is being recorded and all attendees have entered in a listen-only mode at this time. There will be opportunity for public comment throughout today's call, and we will give you all the instructions on how to enter the public comment queue at that time. With that, I'd now like to formally begin today's meeting and turn it over to Chair Robert Konziolka. Please go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon and welcome to our May meeting. Thank you for your attendance and your interest in today's meeting. The governing body recognizes the value of public awareness and stakeholder perspectives. As just noted, there will be opportunities for public comments throughout the meeting, and we invite your participation with comments where appropriate. I would now like to turn the meeting over to Corporate Secretary Roger Collington.
Thank you, Chair Konziolka. Let me start out with the roll call, and we'll start with you, Chair Konziolka.
Here.
Vice Chair Wagner.
Here.
Member Campbell.
Here.
Member Decker.
Here.
And Member Prescott.
Here.
Thank you. We have a full complement of the governing body, and we may proceed. Let me just note about the public comment process. If there's someone in the room that happened to arrive, we would have them fill out a card for that in there, and then we would use those public comment cards as we do for all in-person meetings. For the virtual attendees, when public comment is called, we then ask them to raise their hand in Zoom, and the operator provides instructions for them to join the queue and to provide the public comments. And that, I will turn it over to you, Chair Konziolka, and our next agenda item, which is for the general public comment.
Thank you. So, Silas, if we can open the lines up for anyone interested in making a public comment on an item that is not on the agenda today.
If you would like to speak under general public comment, you can please press the raise hand icon at the bottom center of your Zoom screen. If you are dialed in through the phone only line, you can please press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the comment queue. At this time, we don't have any hands up in the queue.
Thank you. We can now move on to agenda item 2, which is the approval of the March 25th and April 8th general session meeting minutes. And Roger, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Chair Konziolka. So if we can have a motion to approve the March 25th and April 8th, 2025 general session minutes for the WEM governing body.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, governing body. The motion passes. And back to you, Chair Konziolka.
Thank you. Before moving on to agenda item 3, just like to make a few remarks. In addition to our regular session updates by the BOSSer, RIF, and on policy initiatives, today's meeting, we will focus on the continuing benefits and value of the WEIM. Staff will present first quarter results and showcase the trends and performance of the WEIM over time. We continue to see the WEIM deliver on the promise of improved performance and significant savings. As probably everyone who's listening into this meeting is aware, we originally planned today's meeting to have a briefing from our market expert on the congestion revenue allocation decisional item. As you'll hear from CEO Elliot Mainzer, CAISO determined some additional time was needed to finalize the proposal. The governing body understands and respects CAISO's determination that additional time is needed to get this right. So we look forward to addressing this decisional item next month. And so with that, our next agenda item is number 3, and that is the CEO remarks. Elliot Mainzer, President and CEO of CAISO, is here to provide us with his update.
Thank you very much, Chair Konziolka and Vice Chair Wagner, members of WM governing body. It's great to see all of you, and welcome to Folsom. So I'm going to highlight just several of the items from my May CEO report, I think of greatest relevance to the governing body. First of all, we all know we're turning the corner into summer, and this is the season when we are doing a ton of preparedness In addition to all of the tabletop exercises that we do here inside California, with our partners in the utility sector and the state government, the regulatory agencies. Back on May 7th, we also hosted our 5th annual Summer Reliability Readiness Roundtable, where we pulled together balancing authorities and utilities from across the West to take a look at the supply-demand picture across the region. I think things are looking quite good for the summer. We've had a pretty good water year, both in California, halfway decent water year up in the Northwest. I think the transmission system is in good shape and folks seem generally well prepared. In terms of the numbers, back on May 5th, we did publish our 2025 Summer Loads and Resource Assessment. And based off of our 1 in 10 loss of load expectation analysis, the assessment shows a surplus of about 1,451 megawatts needed to meet that standard before having to run into additional resources to protect us against further distressed grid conditions. So that's a good picture. I think generally we're feeling good about the progress. As you know, last year was another banner year for onboarding of new resources inside California. I think we brought about over 7,000 megawatts of additional capability onto the system last year. It's about 25,000 megawatts over the last several years. Our battery fleet is now close to 12,000 megawatts. So certainly a tremendous amount of onboarding. I think we've made some real progress in terms of strengthening resource adequacy here in the state. And so we go into the state into the summer, I think in our standard sort of guardedly optimistic position. We do know it's going to be, it's looking like it's shaping up to be another hot summer. The heat, that big pressure, high pressure system, which has been centered over Texas last couple of summers, looks as though it may be working its way a little bit further to the west. So we've got some decent probability of west-wide heat this summer, although the sea surface temperatures across Southern California are a little bit cooler, so that there is some potential for diversification. But as we know, the base case looks solid, but ever ready for the extreme weather events and the tails of the distribution, but feel well coordinated. I want to turn my attention to the congestion revenue allocation issue, as Chair Kanzioka mentioned. As we discussed in our last meeting back in March, we have been working extensively with stakeholders across the region on congestion revenue allocation issues for EDAM. You know, we kicked off this effort in response to concerns and commentary that arose during the Pacific Core Open Access Transmission Tariff filing at FERC, and I think we've made some real progress. I really appreciate the team for really leaning in on this issue. I think it's another example of the CAISO doing a good job at listening and responding. You know, we had planned to bring our proposals as a decisional item for this month's joint session of the Board of Governors and the WM governing body, but we have adjusted the schedule and now intend to present the proposal to the joint session of the governing bodies in a June special session next month. This is going to give us, I think, some important additional time to explore further enhancements that have been suggested and supported by stakeholders in the last round of stakeholder comments, including, importantly, the consideration of supporting parallel flow congestion revenue allocation based on economically bid schedules. The additional time is going to give us some space to take further stakeholder comment on the effects of the proposal on congestion revenue rights provided within the ISO balancing area, which I know is also another important issue. So earlier this week, we published a revised draft of a final proposal that's informed by stakeholder comments, and we're going to be hosting a stakeholder workshop to discuss any further revisions to the proposal, followed by a comment period, market notice, and process being published in the coming days with additional schedule details. So we appreciate, as I said, the extensive engagement from the broad stakeholder community on this initiative and the continued collaborative engagement so that we can maintain our, I think, important momentum on implementing EDAM next year, but also addressing these transitional issues as transparently as possible. Just also wanted to note that given this busy schedule and all of the other work that's sort of stacked up related to EDAM's launch, we have been, hearing from our stakeholders that we need to be mindful about workload, not only for the ISO, but really importantly for our stakeholders as well. We have made some necessary adjustments to the ISO's overall initiative schedule by rescheduling meetings, or in some cases actually slowing down schedules to ensure the stakeholders have the bandwidth to fully engage with the ISO initiatives. And so we're going to continue to welcome stakeholder feedback and have conducted a stakeholder survey to solicit views on prioritization of both 2025 policy activities and those for 2026 through 2028. And I think paired with feedback from a report that was actually put out by the Regional Issues Forum, we're using the survey results to inform a new policy roadmap for the remainder of 2025 that will be presented later today for your information. So thanks to everybody. I want to just make sure we are sensitive both to the not only the internal workload, but we know there's a lot on people's plates, and we need to make sure that we've got a sustainable pace and that we're doing a good job implementing these different initiatives. I wanted to mention also back on April 2nd, FERC did accept the ISO's tariff amendment that's supporting the implementation of the West-wide Governance Pathways Step 1 proposal. I think a very important step, thanks to all the people that put all of the energy framing that and now getting it across the goal line at FERC. As a reminder, the Step 1 proposal moves the primary decision-making authority to the WEIM governing body for the market rules associated with the EIM and a future EDAM. The tariff change introduces a new dual filing process if the two governing bodies can't agree on a proposed tariff filing regarding our energy markets. And with that dual filing option, the two governing bodies could approve alternative proposals filed at FERC as effectively co-equals only after other steps are taken to reach an agreement. FERC could then approve one or the other potentially adopt elements of each. So this is a very important step forward. And along with the other changes associated with Pathway Step 1 proposal that did not require FERC approval will take effect once the participation threshold conditions in the extended day-ahead market are met, which is likely here, I think, in the foreseeable future. So we're looking forward to that final step and having those rules go formally into effect. And thanks again to everybody. I will also just mention that we are closely watching the evolution of Senate Bill 540 as it works its way through the California legislature. There's a huge team of folks, sort of the broad coalition and others working on that. We continue to stand as a technical resource for that team and are obviously interested in watching how things play out as the bill moves through the legislative process. And thanks to the incredible group of people who are working on that very important initiative. Finally, I just wanted to mention, as we'll hear shortly, the 2025 quarterly benefits report for the first quarter was another banner quarter for WEIM, bringing the cumulative benefits since 2014 to just under $7 billion, which really is remarkable. And that doesn't even touch upon the increasingly important reliability benefits of the market. The Q1 benefits for the 22 participants were $369.3 million. I think providing another reminder of why we're here today to continue to reinforce the benefits of the Western Energy Imbalance Market and to build on it through EDAM. And I'm just going to close by, this is a very dynamic time for our industry. It's a dynamic time for the West. And I just wanted to thank all of you for the work that you've done to support us to get to this point already, and just the incredible group of people across California and the broader West who are all working so hard to support us on EDAM, and to the team inside the CAISO and with both PacifiCorp and Portland General as our first adopters. Thank you all for the just unbelievable volume of work that's going in right now to keep EDAM on track for 2026 implementation. So with that, I conclude my report and happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you, Chair Kanzioka.
Elliot, thank you very much for those remarks. I'm going to go to the governing body members to see if they have any questions for you.
Looks like we're good to go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I was having a hard time seeing the detail to see if anybody had their hand up. So we'll move on, and I'm going to temporarily skip agenda item 4, which is the body of state regular update, and we're going to go to agenda item 5, which is the update on the Regional Issues Forum. And with us today, we have the new RIF chair, Allison Mace. Allison, welcome to our meeting. Allison is the manager of bulk marketing, market analysis, and policy at BPA. So Allison, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Kanzioka, Vice Chair Wagner, and members of the governing body. Thank you for inviting me to share an update from the Western Energy Markets Regional Issues Forum. We have had already had a busy spring for the RIF, and I will update you on a couple of the key topics that we're working on. First, I want to note that beginning in April, we do have a new roster of officers, as was mentioned. I am the RIF chair. Lindsay Schleckaway of NV Energy, the WEIM entity liaison, has stepped into the vice chair role. And Vijay Singh of Pacificor, the EDAM entity liaison, is the secretary. And we're all looking forward to the work of the RIF this year with that leadership team. So getting into the updates, first, I wanted to note the roundtable report. The RIF held our annual RIF roundtable on the policy initiative roadmap and catalog process at our April 9th meeting in Portland. And last week, you received the report from the RIF on the roundtable. That report has also been posted to the RIF website for the public to see. I'd like to just highlight a few of the common themes from the report. We saw cross-sector support for the evaluation of the methodology for allocation of congestion revenue in the EDAM, of course, which is expected for decision in June. There was also shared support for the CAISO to address both intertie bidding and market seams issues that may emerge with the implementation of EDAM. There were also a few areas where we saw divergent perspectives amongst the sectors and wanted to note those. Those were interesting as well. Some of the sectors emphasized the importance of continuing existing initiatives, while others suggested slowing down or pausing initiatives due to a strain on stakeholder resources to participate. That gets to the roadmap conversation coming up later in the agenda today. There were also differing opinions with respect to upcoming EDAM implementation. Some sectors indicated a strong preference for CAISO to primarily focus on EDAM's successful implementation, while other sectors have a preference to begin to address anticipated EDAM market design issues prior to the scheduled go-live date. So we had a couple of areas where we had agreement and also saw some divergence in the sectors, as we often do, with interests and prioritization on that roadmap, both for this year and for the coming years. So I hope that you will enjoy our roundtable report paper. If upon reading it, you do have any questions, you know where to reach us. We would be happy to engage on any discussion on any of the sector highlights or the cross-sector notes. The second area I wanted to touch on is the RIF Enhancements Project. So we presented on this at our April 9th meeting as well. We released the RIF Enhancements discussion paper prior to the April 9th meeting, and we had requested stakeholder comments on the proposed plan. The comments were due last week on May 15th, and I did want to report that we received comments from 12 stakeholders, which is exciting. We are working on reviewing those and digesting those, and we will also post those on our website so that those are shared publicly. And our next step in the RIF enhancements work is to review the comments, to update the discussion paper, and publish a final paper, and then develop a work plan to implement the enhancements. So we're looking forward to reviewing all of the comments, looking at how those relate to what was in the discussion paper, and then developing that proposed work plan of how we're going to move forward with them. And then finally, I want to note we are in the midst of planning for our June 17th meeting. That will be held in Reno the afternoon of the day prior to the Western Energy Markets governing body meeting in Reno. The agenda is still in formation. We expect to have a draft out in the coming week, but I can tip out the topics we'll be talking about. It will include a market seams panel that will be in follow-up to the April session, with more of a focus on planning for day-ahead market seams in the West. The first panel was focused on looking at the Eastern markets and lessons learned and some of the existing seams in the West, and we'll be shifting our focus to more of a forward-looking focus in this panel. We will be joined by Black Hills Electric and BHE Montana, who will do an introduction and update on their implementation activities for the WEIM and EDAM. And finally, we will do a follow-up on the RIF enhancements paper, including a discussion of the comments and next steps. And we're also working on one other topic that we're working on confirming, and we'll post that agenda soon. We are looking forward to hosting the meeting in Reno in conjunction with the governing body meeting on June 18th. That wraps up the updates I prepared today to share with you. I welcome any comments or questions regarding the Regional Issues Forum update. Thank you.
Allison, thank you for this report. Let me go to the governing body members, see if they have any questions or comments.
Rob, I'm not seeing any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate the help. The screen is quite small from where I'm looking at it. Allison, if I inadvertently call you Allie, it's just that I know you, and so I slip a little bit. Really great update, and let me just say that you and the entire RIF leadership team deserves a lot of compliments and kudos on that report. Really well done. I know the governing body members have had a chance to go through it, and it was very enlightening, and it was very helpful to see the perspectives of each of the groups, and what they thought was important and what they thought they wanted continued. And I thought that there was pretty good overall message contained within that report on the focus areas. So I think that's going to be very helpful for everybody involved in the process. So thank you.
Great. Thank you for the feedback. Appreciate that.
So we are going to move on to agenda item 6. And this is the briefing on the WEM benefits and market update first quarter. Elliot had also referenced the information that is going to be contained in this presentation. To introduce this subject, we have Anna McKenna, the Vice President from CAISO on Market Design and Analysis. So Anna.
Thank you, Chair Conzioka. It is my pleasure to introduce Guillermo Bautista-Alderete, our Director of Market Performance and Advanced Analytics. He will be providing you an overview of the quarterly benefits, as well as some insights on what are the drivers of these benefits, and give you some additional context. So with that, I will turn it over to Guillermo.
Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. Chair Conzioka, Vice Chair Wagner, members of the governing body, thank you for having me this afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here to provide an update about the Western Energy Imbalance Market benefits for the first quarter of 2025. Next slide, please. The total benefits that we accrue for the first quarter of 2025 is $369 million. And this is across the different balancing areas participating in the footprint of the market that consists of 23 balancing areas. The dynamics, the levels of the benefits vary from month to month, from participant to participant, and it is a reflection of the dynamics of the real-time market. The dynamics imposed by the transmission system, by the economic participation, by the volume of transfers, and the resource characteristics and the system conditions in general that we have in the system. Overall, we have 3 main drivers that drive this level of benefits. The first one is the market footprint. We have a very solid, robust, wide footprint consisting of 23 balancing areas, and that brings a lot of diversity, not only geographical, but also economic. We have different type of resources with different type of cost, and that allows the economic participation in this wide footprint. The second component is the transfers. The transfers is the enablers for allowing this economic participation of the market. By not just having the balancing areas, but also the associated transfer capability that they bring into the picture, it allows really to untap these economic opportunities in the market footprint. And that comes to the third item, that is no more than the economic displacement of energy. The main driver for the benefits is with no doubt motivated by the level of transfers. But it is not just the volume of the transfers, it's also at the value that they displace internal generation. We may have the same level of transfer realized between 2 entities, but the price, the value at which they are displacing internal, more expensive generation is really what defines the magnitude of the benefits. And we have seen that changing from case to case, from area to area, that high value of economic displacement is really what materializes this level of benefits. When we have cheap transfers coming in from certain areas, displacing high price bidding information from the hosting area. Next slide, please. With the total benefits that we have since the inception of the Western energy imbalance market, as of the end of the first quarter of 2025, we have a total of $6.99 billion. As Elliot indicated, this is kind of rounding to $7 billion. And it is because it's a big number. We are talking about here billions of dollars. When you look at the more granular information, we were short by $13 million to hit the 7 billion mark in the end of the first quarter. Well, I can tell you that now that we have completed April, we have easily surpassed the $7 billion, and we're going to be reporting this number in the upcoming update. And this is a very concise testament of the effectiveness, the value that the Western energy imbalance market brings to the table by allowing this centralized dispatch able to find all possible opportunities in the economic sense to move power from one area to another. Next slide, please. This illustration is very familiar, but it really highlights the value of a centralized market that is able to manage supply and demand across a footprint such as the Western interconnection. On the left-hand side, we have all the possible combinations of transfers that have happened in the first quarter of 2025. On the left-hand side, we have the areas that are getting the power from. And on the right-hand side is the areas that are receiving the power. And every single stream that you see here is the eventual realization of one transfer that happened between two balancing areas. The fact that we have so many streams is, again, a reflection of all the possible permutations of transfers that may happen among the different balancing areas in the system. The thickness of each stream stands for the volume of the transfers that realize between these two pairwise of balancing areas realizing the transfer. On the right-hand side, we have just the total volume of the transfers. We can see that different values of transfers associates with different participation in the market. But across the board, we have all entities having the benefit of having transfer associated either imports or exports. And that is really what brings the value of this centralized market. Next slide, please. And talking more about the transfers, this is a historical view of how the transfers have evolved over the years. Going back all the way from the inception of the Western energy imbalance market back in 2014 with PAC, and how that untap and grow linearly over the years as we onboarded more and more balancing areas into the market. This has materialized two effects. One is that every time we have a new entity, that entity brings additional transfer capability by means of just the connectivity that it has with the neighboring areas. But it also has a compounded effect, a secondary effect, because once we have a new entity joining the market, now it allows secondary transfers between adjacent balancing areas that before were not possible. These two components together give us these solid volumes of transfers over the years. Next slide, please. Moving on to prices. Prices are a factor in the assessment of the level of benefits that we're going to realize in the market. This is a historical view for the last 14 months or so, where we can have the reference of the previous year. Relative to the 2024, where we have this extreme cold event that rise prices at historical levels, prices in the first quarter of 2025 have been moderate and indeed much lower than those experienced in the previous year. This is the time of the year when we start moving out of the winter conditions in some areas like in the Pacific Northwest. That means higher demands, higher prices. And as we go into the shoulder months, now these prices subside because we have milder loads, we have more abundant supply, and therefore the prices are going to reflect that condition of healthy supply. And therefore, we tend to see the prices to decline. When we see this in a more granular fashion, this is organized by each of the 3 months and by each balancing area participating in the market. We can see the trend going from higher prices to lower prices just as we get out of the winter time frame. And the other variation that you can appreciate here is how much differences of prices happen between the different balancing areas. That is a reflection of the economics of the region. Different regions experience different conditions, and the prices are going to reflect that type of dynamics. Specifically, when we see this type of price separations is because congestion. Congestion because we have exhausted the transfer capability between the balancing areas, and that is going to create a natural economic separation. But in this quarter specifically, we also observe price separation due to congestion of internal constraints to some balancing areas. One example, for instance, is the area of the public service of New Mexico. We can see that the prices go low in February, and they indeed, on average, ended up being negative in March. This doesn't mean that there was a negative price every single interval of the whole quarter. Is that on average, the price ended up being negative. And that is because there was internal congestion in that area that depressed the prices because the congestion was to relieve that constraint, and therefore the price signal was to deck generation in that area. That's the reason you can see this behavior of price differential driven by this type of separations due to congestion. This is all what I have for this briefing. I will be happy to address any comment questions you may have.
Any questions from the governing body?
Oh. Are there any questions from the governing body?
Andy.
Yes, Chair Kanzioka, Zandy, I have a question. Guillermo, I was just thinking about the transfer capacity and how important that is in driving benefits. There are a number of transmission lines under construction coming soon in the western region. Would we expect to see that sort of becoming transfer capacity that is available in the EIM market for optimization?
I don't have a specific information about how this project may eventually impact the transfer capability. In concept, what I can elaborate is that yes, as more transmission is available and that capacity is actually made available to the market is going to be able to leverage on that additional paths and capability, not necessarily just for that hosting balancing area, but with the adjacent neighboring balancing areas. And this is indeed one of the big components of the EIM market, that it can leverage on that transfer capability to allow for any possible permutation of power transfer between any two balancing areas. Having more capacity obviously is going to give us a increasing level of flexibility to move that power where it's needed.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. It's always exciting to see the complicated graphs showing so many transfers going so many directions, so much value flowing across the West. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the governing body?
I'm not seeing any.
Thank you, Rebecca. Guillermo, one observation, but I don't know if you can really elicit anything. The last 11 quarters have all been over 350 million. And even with the drop in gas prices, it stayed very steady and very high. Do you expect that trend to continue? Any comment on that?
Yes, and I was curious because I was doing the same math before the presentation, and I realized that every year at this rate, at this pace, we are accruing about over $1 billion per year. And that has been sustained since the third quarter of 2022. And when we see the timeline of the transfers, for instance, it has to do much with the footprint level that we have reached by that time. It was just before the last onboarding of the three EIM entities, Avangrid, El Paso, and Walk. So once we have that solid footprint, the benefits have been consistent. And as you said, they remain consistent regardless of the volatility of the gas prices, regardless of the level of renewable penetration. So it's very hopeful to see that that number is here to stay.
Excellent, thank you. Guillermo, hold on. Let's go to public comment. So Silas, if you can see if there is anybody who would like to make a comment.
If you would like to make a comment, you can please press the raise hand icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Or if you are dialed into the phone-only line, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the comment queue. At this time, we do not have any comments in the queue.
Fondas, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to go back to agenda item 4, which is the update from the body of state regulators. With us for the Bosser update is the Bosser Vice Chair, Commissioner John Hammond. Commissioner Hammond is a commissioner with the Idaho Public Utilities Commission. So, Commissioner Hammond, welcome back, and we're looking forward to your update.
Yeah, thank you very much. I apologize. I still am having difficulty operating the camera on my new computer. So you don't want to see my face anyways. Let's just be honest. But I apologize for not being here earlier. We call a decision meeting, and then we had some deliberations. It's just been a full day. And then later on, in about an hour and a half, we start probably a 7 or 8 hour hearing on net metering. So that should be a lively discussion. Thank you for having me here today. As I said, my name is John Hammond. I'm an attorney by trade, have been at the commission for a little while, 3 years in this seat, and have worked in private practice for 15 years in transactional and energy, telecom work, and then clerked a bit in federal court. Right now, I'm also the chair of the Committee on Electricity for NARUC. But good afternoon, Chair Kanzioka, Vice Chair Wagner, and members of the Western Energy Markets governing body. Thanks for the opportunity to provide this update on recent activities of our group. Bosser Chair, Commissioner Gabe Aguilera from New Mexico had a conflict today, so I'll be providing the report. Since Bosser's last report to you in March, the committee is focusing on understanding the design changes in the EDAM congestion revenue allocation policy initiative that's underway. We have dedicated a lot of time this spring to examining the complexities and nuances of this allocation method in the greater Westwide footprint. At our April in-person meeting in San Diego, California, we invited CAISO management to give a comprehensive overview of the current EDAM congestion revenue allocation design that's approved by FERC. And currently, we are reviewing the revised final draft that's been published for stakeholder feedback. Due to the pace of the initiative, Bosser may at times not be able to provide a position in the stakeholder process. But we welcome the opportunity, of course, and we have taken this opportunity today and going forward to gain a better technical understanding of the design and the proposed changes. As for any other initiatives underway at the CAISO, I don't have specific updates from anyone on Bosser or from the committee itself or the body at this time. We'll continue to monitor each. Next, we've been involved in the nominating committee process, me particularly, working with the other folks on the nominating committee to fill the upcoming vacancy on the governing body. For those that, I've already said that. There's been a lot of good work that's taken place. We, if you've heard from others, conducted interviews recently, outstanding interviews, really amazing people that we had the opportunity to meet with. I specifically learned a ton through that process, not only from the folks that were interviewed, but also from the other nominating committee members. Just I can't say enough good things about just the level of knowledge and professionalism and expertise that I experienced. So it was fantastic for me, selfishly. But the process, I think, works very well. Again, very great candidates, and I think once the process is done, our hope is that people will be very happy. So lastly, Bosser also continues to monitor the Westwide Governance Pathways Initiative. As you know, there are 3 Bosser members, including myself, that are participating in the Regional Organization Formation Committee. Those other 2 are Commissioner Darcy Houck from California and Commissioner Milt Dumit from Washington. We're serving as liaisons in that effort. I believe someone from the Formation Committee will be providing you, and maybe they already have because I'm late, with an update on the work of this committee. So I apologize for that. Looking ahead, our next meeting will take place on June 13th virtually. That concludes my remarks today. And on the behalf of the body of state regulators, I'd really like to thank you for your time. I know everyone's busy, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have about things we're working on. Thanks again. Thanks for having me on.
Mr. Hammond, thank you for those remarks. It's actually too bad that your camera is not working. I was looking forward to maybe getting some more inside tips on some more areas to go explore.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I got to get that running again. I'll get that running again. And yeah, there's so many great places around our country, right, to visit. But I certainly am a fan of what Idaho has to offer if you want to get outdoors. So thank you.
And just so you know, we are getting a detailed update from the Formation Committee tomorrow. So you didn't miss anything.
Okay, I wasn't sure. And again, I apologize. And thank you for your patience.
And no need to apologize. We had our own bit of technical difficulties here at the beginning that got worked out, and it's always one thing or another. Let me go to the governing body members to see if they have any questions for you. Are there any questions or comments from the governing body members?
I'm seeing none, Rob.
Okay. So Commissioner Hammond, thank you very much. And we appreciate your time and joining us and providing this update.
Yeah, and thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Great to participate.
So we will move on, and I'm going to jump now to agenda item 7, which is a briefing on policy initiatives. And once again, to introduce this topic will be Anna McKenna, the CAISO Vice President of Market Design and Analysis. So Anna.
Thank you, Chair Kanzioka. I have the pleasure of introducing Becky Robinson, our Director of Market Policy and Development. You will see we've been quite busy as always and have a number of activity going on, including the more intensive effort that we've been putting into the expedited process on congestion revenue allocation. And with that, I will ask Becky to give you some more insights on what's been going on in the policy development process.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Anna. Good afternoon, members of the governing body. Great to be with you here today. If we could go to the next slide, please. So first up, an update on our EDAM congestion revenue allocation initiative that we have been kicking off and conducting on an expedited timeline. So I think, as you know, this initiative is looking at a narrow issue. It's involving congestion revenue allocation that is associated with when day-ahead schedules impact transmission constraints in a separate balancing area. So really looking at where schedules in one balancing area are impacting a constraint in a neighboring balancing area, and that's sort of what we call parallel flows. And the congestion revenue that arises as a result of that is the narrow scope that this initiative is dealing with. So just yesterday, we published a revised draft final proposal and are planning to do a stakeholder meeting to discuss that on May 27th. So later this month, as we continue kind of working towards refining a proposal there that we hope to bring for decision in June. So as Elliot mentioned earlier in the CEO report, this sort of adjusting the schedule from planning a May decision to taking a little bit more time and planning for a June decision instead has allowed us to really kind of further explore some additional enhancements that have been suggested and supported by stakeholders, which we are continuing to explore. And those include thinking about congestion revenue allocation, again, for this narrow issue, thinking about that in the context not just of self-schedules in the day-ahead market associated with OAT rights, but a potentially broader pool of schedules, those associated with balance schedules that are arising from economic bids that would still be associated with OAT rights. So that's one topic area for further exploration. And the second is really kind of the effects of the proposal on congestion revenue rights, which are the sort of, I wouldn't say equivalent of OAT rights, but the parallel, if you will, within the CAISO balancing area. And so any questions on that item?
Anita has a question.
So two things, and I haven't read the final proposal that you guys published yesterday yet, but so just in reading through the comments, a couple things that struck me, and I just so I'm curious, are they going to actually be addressed? One is that this isn't a one and done, and like where is phase 2 and where is phase 3? Is that going to be in the final proposal so there's some certainty from stakeholders about how this will be addressed going forward, or some at least pro forma timing to that regard? So that's one question. And then the second one is, in terms of some of the concerns that were expressed both in the MSC and DMM, does the final proposal also take into account some of that feedback?
Great questions. So on the first, yes, you're very right to pick out, to point out that we are working towards a proposal. We're refining it. We're trying to get it to a place that is a good place to be for EDAM day one. But we acknowledge that is not one and done, as you said. So we are in the revised draft final proposal is anticipating and indicating a strong interest and commitment in continuing to explore some things for year one enhancements, right? Some things that we think we have line of sight to, potentially, but which are not, for technology reasons and sort of in terms of, they're not day one solutions, but which we think that we see some fair amount of consensus around that we can introduce them for year one enhancements. So we'll continue to work on those. And we also include in the revised draft final proposal a roadmap to kind of think about long-term, what does this look like? So even beyond those couple of items that I mentioned, that would be potential year one enhancements, long-term, where do we see this going? What and where should we be driving this to? So we are trying to not wait to start that conversation until later. And we are committing in that, you'll see in the revised draft final proposal, we're committing to, kick off those stakeholder workshops to really start talking about that in earnest, even before EDAM kicks off, before EDAM launch. So that is going to be a topic that will continue to be working with stakeholders on what is the best path forward. For your second question, as it relates to the Department of Market Monitoring and the Market Surveillance Committee and that feedback, we are continuing to have conversations with both of those entities and trying to incorporate feedback from both. I think the moving away from, evolving the proposal, if you will, from at first focusing just on self-schedules to, in a potential year one enhancement, think about applying this to schedules resulting from economic bids in the day-ahead market is one area that we feel is responsive to some of the MSC feedback, in that it does not institute a requirement to self-schedule, right? We know you don't run a market so that everyone can just self-schedule and tell you how they want to run all their assets, right? You want the market because you want to optimize over a wide portion of assets, at least, even if some resources are not as flexible as others. And so appreciate that does not sort of eliminate the MSC's concern about an incentive to self-schedule from the structure, but we think that sort of not forcing those schedules to come in as self-scheduled is a way of moving in a good direction. We also continue to have conversations with the Department of Market Monitoring and are actively taking their feedback into account as well.
I guess I would make just a comment. Thank you for that. Thank you for the answers to that. The comment would be that yourself and staff have done just a great job of bringing stakeholders together. And this has moved rapidly to recognizing we're in a new place and people can't be continue to be afraid of the future and that this is transition. We are moving, and it's not unlike when the Western Energy Imbalance Market was stood up. So I hope that stakeholders really do appreciate it's never one and done. It's always going to be evolution, and that they continue to support the ISO and the work it's doing.
Thank you. If no other questions, I think we can move to the next slide.
Hey, Becky, I have a follow-up question to your second answer for Anita's question. And it's really not directed to you. It's probably more general to staff, but recognizing that exchange and that issue, can I assume that this is something that will be tracked and monitored over time to see how it's performing?
Yes, absolutely. And we do spell out a bit in the revised draft final proposal what that monitoring plan looks like. So we are planning to monitor, transmission constraints, sort of volumes of flows on those constraints, and to be building up a data set, if you will, of that we can then leverage in those future policy conversations about where should this go, so that we're informed by facts on the ground. And not just sort of making assumptions about how we expect things to play out. So that's a very important piece as well. Thanks for highlighting that.
Thank you.
All right, next topic, the Western Energy Imbalance Market Assistance Energy Transfer Extension. I am happy to report that we are making some progress on this. So since we last met, we have had a stakeholder meeting and we've gotten supportive comments in terms of extending the existing assistance energy transfer functionality. And so we are planning to do that through some very discrete tariff revisions. We would simply propose to remove the sunset date that's currently in the tariff, not choose a new date out in the future, just strike that sunset provision so that it would be permanent provision of the tariff. As well, in addition to extending it, we're also proposing a very minor tariff revision, just sort of to go in that package to address an issue that's arisen and that we think we should take care of, which is that for operator actions taken in coordination with a reliability coordinator, we think those actions should not create additional financial exposure. And so we've seen one incident where that occurred. And we'd like to just clarify the tariff that in that circumstance, there shouldn't be that exposure. And we got good stakeholder feedback on that as well. So we hope to bring that item to you and the Board of Governors for a decision in July. So with that, any questions there?
I don't see anything from the governing body. Chair Kanzioka?
Sorry about that. I had to take it off mute. Vice Chair Wagner, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you. Next item, our Price Formation Enhancements Initiative. So this is one initiative where we really have kind of adjusted the schedules quite a bit to make some room on the stakeholder calendar for the EDAM Congestion Revenue Allocation Initiative. But in the meantime, there's still been work going on. So in the meantime, these are 3 topic areas where, like others, we got stakeholder prioritization feedback on how they would rank these in terms of the rest of the priorities through that stakeholder survey that RIF Chair Allie Mace mentioned earlier, as well as Elliot in his CEO report. And we've also been continuing the work in the sense of, in a recent market surveillance committee meeting a couple weeks ago, we had Guillermo's team present some market power mitigation analysis to them. And so good discussion there around what does that show and what does that highlight in terms of policy choices, in terms of, in particular, for market power mitigation at the balancing area level. And we are, internally, we've been continuing to work towards developing straw proposals for scarcity pricing and market power mitigation at the balancing area level, and are hoping to be able to publish those later this quarter. So to re-engage with stakeholders in that way and kind of see where we are in terms of moving forward on some of those issues. With that, any questions on price formation?
I just want to clarify Q2 would be before June 1st.
Sorry, I meant before June 30th.
Okay, so in Q3. Okay. Yeah, no, it's still Q2. Okay, just knowing when to start looking for this. So we heard this morning from some comments on DMM in regard to the scarcity pricing too and load uncertainty. I'm assuming you guys are also syncing up with them in terms of the scarcity pricing.
So yes, we have discussed in the working group a suggestion by the Department of Market Monitoring under the scarcity pricing umbrella of looking at our flexible ramp product and kind of building that out to cover a wider range of uncertainty, if I can put it that way. And so that's gotten some good discussion in the working group, and we are coordinating there. I think, I don't want to spoil the punchline in terms of the straw proposals. I think we're happy to continue working through that. I will share that one of the pieces of feedback we've gotten from stakeholders in general in the scarcity pricing sort of book of work is that they're not interested in prioritizing work on new products at this time, right? There's a lot going on, and sort of devising a new product so that we can sort of see more of the scarcity pricing that we think we should is not been where the group is going. The DMM suggestion is not exactly that, right? We have an existing flexible ramp product, but I think some of the details of how you would build that out to make it cover more than it covers today start to look like you're stepping in that direction of, almost designing a new product. So I think it will be good to get feedback from stakeholders on, is that an area they'd like to see us pursue, or is that something that, for instance, might be better taken up once we get to EDAM launch and we have imbalance reserve product, which is also sort of covering uncertainty. It's a day ahead equivalent or day ahead parallel, if you will, of our flex ramp product in real time, and kind of thinking about those together. Would that be informative to kind of thinking about changes to the flex ramp product? But happy to continue those conversations. And yes, they are getting some airtime.
I just wanted to make a note. This is Anna McKenna. DMM actually does participate quite actively in the stakeholder process, and they got submit public comments as well. And so we always take their comments into consideration. And we, of course, also have, discussions with them along the way as these things develop. So to your question, are we coordinating with them? We are definitely coordinating and staying in touch with them with their concerns. And when it comes to market power mitigation and scarcity pricing, that's an area they're always particularly interested in. And so they've been quite active in this effort, and we'll continue to engage with them.
All right, if there's no more questions, next slide, please. Okay, greenhouse gas coordination. So this working group has really been focused on accounting for state policies that mandate carbon reduction, but do so without a price on carbon emissions or without a trading platform for those. And so the group has been working diligently on designing policy on an out-of-market accounting and reporting approach. That's the term of art they've come up with, accounting and reporting. It's something reporting that occurs after the market runs. So it's not something that's directly influencing the market optimization itself, like our GHG attribution. But it's a separate bucket of ways of thinking about compliance with GHG regulations and goals. So a subgroup of the working group has been meeting weekly, reporting back to the larger working group monthly, bi-monthly, and really kind of working through the details of the report format. And we actually just published a straw proposal on this last Friday. So happy to report out on that and recommend that for reading if you're interested in learning more, kind of the direction that that's going. It is kind of, at bottom, it is a reporting. So it's not, so what that means in terms of tariff, whether it's a tariff change or not, sort of still yet to be seen in some ways. We think that depending on how the work is going to get done and there might be tariff authority needed to outline the funding approach to that. But we'll continue to work through those issues with stakeholders and think more about, like, is this, what are the nature of the changes that are happening here as we're developing this report that folks can use for their GHG compliance purposes. Any questions on that? And if not, we can go to the next slide. Gas resource management. So here, again, it's a little bit of a straw proposal season, I've been saying. So this is another area where we're targeting a straw proposal by the end of Q2. I hope I still have another month to get that in for Q2. And so really this initiative, we published, a comprehensive issue paper a few months ago. But we've really, through working with stakeholders, narrowed in on 3 sort of areas where the straw proposal intends to focus. And those are, first, advisory information in advance of the day-ahead market on anticipated gas burn, right? So as folks are navigating the timelines of the day-ahead electric markets and the gas markets and procuring gas, when you don't yet have your day-ahead schedule from the electric market, but you're putting bids in the market, how to do that, and making sure that we are thinking through the information we provide in that context. Again, that advisory information, how we're doing that, standing up that functionality so that folks can have confidence in that. So that's one area. Second area is exploring cost recovery in exceptional circumstances. And so we talked a little bit in the working group about our existing reference levels, which we have around, our cost-based bids for resources that use gas, for instance. And it seems like we may not need sort of generic adjustments to those reference levels, but there might be certain circumstances where additional flexibility is needed. And so continuing conversations about how would you recognize those circumstances and what would you do in those circumstances to be able to provide that flexibility so that resources can always represent their costs accurately in the market. That's the second area. And then the third area is ISO coordination with gas pipelines during restrictive operating conditions like operational flow orders and that sort of things. Any questions there? And if not, we can go to the next slide. Okay, congestion revenue rights. So this initiative is still kind of in the working group phase, and they have covered a lot of ground. They've covered the current program structure and how it functions for stakeholders, getting a variety of stakeholder input on that. We've looked at, Guillermo's group has presented, a thorough analysis of sort of root cause of what's going on in the CRR market as we see that playing out, and in particular, since the reforms we put in place in 2018. And the working group has also been benchmarking against other ISO and RTOs, financial transmission right models, their equivalent of our congestion revenue rights. And so this is all part of our delivering on our commitment at the time of the 2018 reforms to continue to, assess the impacts of the proposals and the changes and consider more comprehensive changes if needed to both allocation and auction design. And so the working group is working through that. As of the last meeting, they were really kind of working through problem statements with stakeholders, which sounds, may sound easy, but I'll say, given the differing viewpoints present among our stakeholder community on things, I thought the team did actually a really nice job of kind of capturing the whole spectrum of things and listening to stakeholders and kind of hearing things in their own terms, which doesn't necessarily drive towards a single solution, but is, I think, an important part of the process for surfacing the issues and how folks are perceiving the market results, the market outcomes. So any questions on congestion revenue rights? All right. And the next topic, demand and distributed energy market integration. So again, working group phase here of this initiative still. They are exploring, the development or enhancement of participation models and market rules associated with demand response and distributed energy resource participation. And so they've put out a discussion paper and are kind of iterating on that as the working group covers more material, but it kind of organizes all the stakeholder input and will hopefully assist in prioritizing how we work through these issues. But we've got 6 broad topic areas identified with problem statements, sort of initial problem statements keyed up in terms of for stakeholders to consider as we work through these things. Just to kind of list through those so you're aware of what's on the table. They are things like performance evaluation methodologies, economic demand response, reliability demand response, distributed energy resource participation, demand side bidding in the, potentially in real time, and enhancing demand flexibility, market options more generally. So just kind of grouping, buckets in terms of how they take on issues, given that there's been a lot of input and a lot of interest in various pieces of this topic. So latest working group really kind of dug deep into the first of those topics, performance evaluation methodologies, which gets into some of the registration and metering, practices and potential alternatives. Any questions there?
A question. Thanks, Becky. I guess, and you're not to y'all are not to the problem statement phase of this yet, but I guess broadly speaking, what are the sorts of improvements to the market overall that could come through things that are being tackled within this initiative?
Yeah, I mean, I think one area that that I've heard a bit about is kind of relates to demand side bidding, where so today in the day ahead market you can have demand side bidding, but really, if you think about responsiveness to tight system conditions and really hot days when things are maybe not going as expected, you might think that you would like to see some of that kind of responsiveness in the real-time market. But we solve the real-time market to a forecast, right? We don't solve the real-time market to where supply and demand intersect, right? We just have supply bids in the real time. Whereas day ahead, we have both supply bids and demand, supply offers and demand bids. And so thinking about, is it possible to do demand bidding in the real-time market? What do you get out of that? Because you can have demand represented on the supply side, but I think some might say there are disadvantages or to that structure of sort of pretending that demand is a supply side resource. I think we're open to, that flexibility on either side of the market. But I think there are those who might think that, who would say that enabling demand bidding, explicit demand bidding might be an avenue where you could get more participation and maybe get it in a way that is perhaps has more market fidelity, if you will, something like that. I think arguments pro and con, but that's something where it feels like it's sort of not an existing functionality today, to the best of my knowledge at least. Or only in very narrow circumstances, but where, some folks might say you could really open up some more demand flexibility if you were to go that route.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, next slide, please. Storage design and modeling. So this initiative is continuing on with monthly stakeholder meetings. And we've had discussions on some stakeholder requested topics and had some stakeholders present there. So we've had some, storage owners and operators present on topics of interest to them, including those such as outage management, novel participation pathways, and issues particular to hybrid resources. We released an issue paper I think about a month ago, issue paper and straw proposal on outage management, nonlinearity, state of charge clarification topics, which was an area of interest that stakeholders had kind of said, for this summer or in advance of summer, let's get on the same page and have some shared understanding about, things that are a little bit more operational related. These aren't anticipated to be tariff changes per se, but just things related to, for outage cards, when I run out of state of charge, like what is the nature of work that I use on this outage card and what are the implications of that decision point, and making sure that there's some uniformity among market participants of just how are they navigating those types of things, how they're representing their capability to the ISO. We are also planning a near-term implementation, which we've talked about with the working group related to our flexible ramp product and state of charge. So for the summer, we identified sort of a little bit of a gap in terms of what the market covers or what the state of charge is taking into account. And we realized that in our state of charge equation that we have, while we account for energy bids energy awards, looking out the next hour as we're solving the real-time market, that sort of thing, we were not taking into account the flexible ramp product awards. So we are planning to make an addition to that existing constraint in the market to account for flex ramp product up awards in our state of charge equation. So basically what that means is that if a battery only has X amount of charge left on the battery, when the real-time market runs and it's doing the multi-interval optimization, looking out the next hour or two, it's going to recognize that it can't give a flex ramp up award in every interval going out for the next 2 hours if there's really limited state of charge, right? So that will be good information to the market because it'll recognize that. And then, for instance, the market may decide, hey, I need to turn on this other resource because that battery is not going to have any state of charge left when I get out to that future interval for flex ramp. We were already taking that into account. We were thinking about energy awards in that future time period, but we just sort of weren't already doing that for flex ramp. So that'll be a change that'll be going in place and that we think will improve market results for the summer.
This is Anna. Becky, I just wanted to make sure it's clear that this is an item that is not going for decisional. This is for the summer enhancements on a process enhancement and is being deployed through a BPM change. And it's not a tariff change or a decisional item.
Yes.
It's just an enhancement of an existing constraint that allows us to account for the state of charge when awarding flexible ramping product.
Thanks, Anna. That's what I was going to ask. But are we going to see what those changes are before you implement them, even though it's not an approval, but we know what's going on?
Well, I think through the BPM process, we normally make that public and inform the public about what is going on with the change in the BPM process. We took a little bit of extra time this time around with this particular issue because there were some stakeholders who were concerned about what is it about? How is it going to perform? So we've taken that time with stakeholders and now we're at the point of deploying the BPM process. We're kind of eager to get this going for a change because it's a summer readiness, or not readiness, but a summer issue to make sure that the resources that are assigned flexible ramping product have the state of charge that is needed, especially the upward direction in the middle of the summer. And so we weren't planning to bring this in as a decisional item, but we thought we'd mention it today to you as what it's all about. So this is what we thought was going to be your briefing on it, but obviously happy to answer more questions about the implications of that. The other thing I wanted to note is that we will be watching this very closely once it goes into the market, and we could be more than happy to provide you an update at the next upcoming meetings on what's going on with the product. Guillermo is here in the room. He'll be watching it very closely to see how it's performing once the mechanism goes in.
Okay, thanks. I guess I'd be watching the BPM coming out in the daily market report. So is that where I would see it?
Yes, that's where you would see the actual implementation of the change. But as I said, we'll be happy to report back on what's going on with the product. I think by June, we'll have had it in for about 2 weeks, Guillermo. Will we? Yeah, nod? Yeah. Okay. Yes, we'll have some information by the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and is 2 weeks really enough time? Would July be a better?
Well, summertime is always a thing. One of the things we'd like to do is give ourselves some time before it gets hot to make sure that, or gets drained on the system so that we have the opportunity to evaluate how it's working. And then if there's anything we need to adjust, we can adjust quickly before it gets deeper into the summer. If you wait too long, then you don't have that ability.
I mean, in terms of coming back to us, you said you're going to bring something back in June?
I'd be happy to give you an update as to how things are going in June.
Okay, got it.
Sorry.
Thanks. Just another question on this, this initiative, not specifically this item we've just been discussing, but just want to first comment, this battery storage area continues to be a really exciting area where I know all the work that y'all are doing is work that nobody has done anywhere in terms of any ISO. These are all brand new issues. I think the progress being made here is going to have benefits well beyond these markets. One of the issues that's kind of out there is a Department of Market Monitoring has really been focusing on bid cost recovery as kind of a priority topic from their vantage point, against an area where the pre-existing policies didn't anticipate the future that we now live in. So I just wanted to ask, how do the priorities that are being currently addressed in this initiative, how do those relate to the bid cost recovery issue if they do, and when do you expect bid cost recovery to be a focus of this initiative?
Sure, great question. So the initiative is meant to be comprehensive. That's intentional. So there's sort of three topic group areas, which are outage management, as well as uplift and DEBs, uplift and default energy bids. So cost-based offers for battery resources. State of charge management being a second bucket, and distribution level and paired resources being a third bucket, kind of issues particular to that. And so we've sort of put all these topics on the table for this comprehensive initiative after we wrapped up the bid cost recovery initiative last year, very intentionally, because among these topic areas, a lot of them go to different drivers of bid cost recovery. And so there was as we sort of kicked this initiative off, we sought feedback on priorities from stakeholders, and decided to focus initially on some of the outage management topics that we discussed in the second bullet there, because I think some stakeholders really saw those as operational related, a little bit urgent in terms of wanting to get, again, shared understanding and clear rules ahead of summer, or clear practices and processes, to make sure that again, we're getting the information in a consistent way from different resources, different battery storage resources. So yes, I think among the working group, right, while some stakeholders advocated for prioritizing bid cost recovery, to work on that first. Overall, there was more desire to focus first on those kind of known issues and where we thought we could make some good progress in a short period of time, a little bit low-hanging fruit. But also to sort of start talking a little bit about all of those topics, to get a shared common understanding of current state of storage design, before getting into more complex and interrelated issues such as bid cost recovery. But good news is, next week at the May 28th meeting, they are going to be sort of starting more robust discussions on storage uplift, so the bid cost recovery, as well as default energy bids. I think that's sort of a natural follow-on now that they've gotten the outage management issues sort of going down the road in terms of just iterating now on what's the proposal. And so starting in earnest to really take up those topics again, and with kind of more shared understanding again of like how does state of charge management play into bid cost recovery. And so I think the plan is, to first talk about day ahead bid cost recovery, then progress into real time, but to kind of think about, potentially what are examples of where bid cost recovery is warranted, where we think it's warranted, what are examples of where perhaps bid cost recovery isn't warranted, and really kind of drive the stakeholder conversation on that front, rather than kind of focusing on how are we calculating bid cost recovery, which was more the reforms that you saw last November, right? What's the calculation? How are we adding it all up the intervals of the day? but kind of think a little bit more holistically now that we've gotten more topics on the table. All right. Next topic, policy initiatives catalog and roadmap process. So you've heard a little bit about this earlier from Ali Mesa's Regional Issues Forum update, but we are well on the way of the catalog and roadmap annual process. So in February, we had stakeholders submit discretionary policy proposals. In April, followed that up with stakeholder prioritization workshops and the Regional Issues Forum roundtable. And then in May, we did the stakeholder prioritization and ranking survey. And so where we are now is that tomorrow you will, at the joint governing body and board of governors meeting, you will see the revised 2025 roadmap for the rest of this year. And the goal for that is to really update the schedules for and targets for existing policy initiatives to accommodate stakeholder bandwidth and kind of take into account what's now on our plate that we didn't see coming at the beginning of the year. Any questions there? All right, and if not, then I think the next slide is we're indicating that here we've got our item that's not under joint authority, so resource adequacy policy development, where that work is continuing with that initiative and working group. And then I think next slide just shows our policy initiative process graphic. And we do not include this month our swim lanes for policy initiatives because you're going to see that tomorrow at the roadmap update. So with that, any more questions?
Chair Wagner, are there any items from the governing body?
Not from the governing body.
I was just, Elliot, I wanted to, thanks Becky, and also just for those who have joined us for today, just thanks to all the people that are logging time and rolling up their sleeves on these various different initiatives. It's a lot of commitment, a lot of time. I know we're making some good progress and looking forward to continuing our momentum at a staged, sustainable pace. So thanks to everybody for their engagement on these issues.
Hey, Becky, hold on while we go to public comment, just in case something comes up. So Silas, can we go to public comment to see if there are any?
If you would like to make a public comment, you can please press the raise hand icon on Zoom or #2 if you are dialed in through the phone only line. At this time, we do not have any hands up in the comment queue.
Okay, Silas, thank you. And Becky, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is 8, which is the informational reports. And Vice Chair Wagner, if I can lean on you one more time here to see if any of the governing body members have any requests regarding informational reports.
I don't see any.
Okay, thank you. And our last is agenda item 9, and that is the future agenda items. Are there any items specifically being requested by the governing body?
No one's rushing forward.
Excellent. So with that, and being no other business, then we will stand adjourned, and I thank everyone for their time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kanzioka. Thank you, governing body.